Hello, I'm Ed Fessler, and I did a Tesla Model 3 100,000 mile video, and I thought I'd cover a couple of things that were brought up in the comments from the video that I had. Of course, I didn't put everything in my video that had happened with my car or whatever. I tried to include everything that was relevant. But a couple people brought up the fact that maybe, or just the issue of Tesla paint. And there seems to be some kind of view out there that maybe it's not very good, or maybe there's some issues with it, or at least it's perceived that it's not very good. So, I don't know a whole lot about paint, but I thought I would share some of the experiences I've had with my car and in relation to the paint, just to give you an idea of, maybe if it's good or bad. I think my paint has held up pretty well over 100,000 miles plus now. I haven't really done anything with it, no protection or anything like that. I haven't put anything on the front of the car. I have used some touch-up paint, and when there's a bigger ding or in the paint, I'll use that touch-up paint to kind of cover it up, something that catches my eye. But other than that, I don't do a whole lot of special attention. I clean it, wash it, and I don't really buff it or wax it or anything like that. But one day I was out, I was splitting firewood, and I thought, well, I'm going to bring some firewood home with me, and use it because I have a wood burning stove. So I was going to bring my car a little closer to the firewood that I had cut, so I was backing up and getting close, and there were some stumps on the ground that I was backing up in between, and I did that fine. But as I was swinging the front end around, I kind of swung it around too far, and the side of the car actually scraped up against the stump, and the stump was only probably about this high. I have a picture of it here. You can see what it looked like, but it put a pretty good dent and scratch in the lower panel of the side of the car, not in the door, but just in that panel below it that is there. And this of course upset me. I did something stupid that I shouldn't have done, and it was kind of getting dark at the time too, so it was a little harder to see. So, but at any rate, this is what happened. So I was faced with the question of, okay, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to maybe replace the whole panel? But if you look at the car, that lower panel actually goes into the back panel of the car, so it's pretty substantial. I'm sure it would cost a lot to replace that, or would I maybe get somebody to fill it in with body paint and repaint it, whatever, I'm not real sure, but it probably pushed in about 3/4 of an inch into the side, and maybe about this long, and there was a part in the back that was a little shorter and a little less that it pushed in. So at any rate, that's what I was faced with. I had to do, and I don't just have an electric car. I also have an electric motorcycle that I bought. You see here what it looked like when it was new. It's not new anymore. I've been racing it for 2.5 years. But I always joke, when I get a new motorcycle, I've had this electric one. I bought some gas ones in the past, quite a few of them. And either when I buy one or my friends buy one, I always joke with them. And I say, okay, yes, nice, shiny, new motorcycle. I say, the first thing you should do with that shiny new motorcycle is bring it to the top of the hill and just throw it down the hill. Just let it tumble, and, because it's going to get that first scratch, that first ding, that first dent. And, you might as well just get it over with, because that way, at that point, you don't even have to worry about it, and it's done. So, it's the same way with a car. It's that first ding, that first scratch, you're like, oh man. At the time, I probably only had I don't know, I'm just guessing 50,000 miles or something. So it was still pretty pristine. That really wasn't real good. And sometimes, the car will get damaged. It's not even your fault. I've had at least 2 times where somebody has opened their door on the side of my car and hit it. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, you're picturing Ed coming, going somewhere, leaving the car, coming back and saying, oh, look at the scratch on my door. Somebody must have hit it. Well, no, that's not what happened at all. Actually, these two people hit my door with their door while I was sitting in the car. So, I'm sitting there and all of a sudden, bam, the whole car shakes. And I'm like, what the heck? What's going on here? And I get out and I come around and, I look at this lady and I'm like, you hit the side of my car with your door. And what does she say? She says, oh, I didn't know you were sitting in the car. So she was not concerned that she hit my car. She wasn't going to say anything. She was not getting out to look at the damage. Just totally ignored it. Both people just acted like it didn't even happen. And I'm sitting there in the car just like, what the heck's going on, So, lots of things can happen with a car. And that's just kind of life sometimes, and things happen. But luckily, with those two incidents, it didn't really hurt the car. Just a minor scratch that, I think I rubbed out. So in that case, the paint actually did pretty good. So that was a good indication of at least one indication of Tesla paint. So back to the gouge that I had in the side of my car, back to that. I just decided that I would take the car and get kind of have somebody, a professional, look at it. So I took it to Bachman Auto Group here in Louisville, and I had one of their body and paint guys look at it. So, they looked at it and they said, well, normally we would take something, if it was in the door, we would get behind it and push it back out. But since it was in the lower panel, there was no way for them to get behind it, or at least they didn't know how. So what they did is they took like this plastic tab, and they took it and they took some hot glue and they stick it onto where the dent is. Now there was a dent where it was dented pretty good, and there was a pretty good scratch in it. But they would hot glue this tab on there, and then they would take this kind of rod with a weight on it, and they would attach it to this tab once it's been glued on there real well. And it's like spring loaded, and it's, they just sort of bang this weight that actually pulls the dent out a little bit. So, it's kind of like bam, 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 and it pulls it. And after they do it a few times, it either lets go with the hot glue, or if it's come out as much as they think it's going to and it hasn't come off, then they kind of pry it off. And they do this several times. They hot glue it on there onto the metal, hammer it, hopefully get a little bit of it out, and just iterate that process. And it's not an exact science. You have to get a certain amount of surface area, I'm sure, to get it to adhere and then pull out. And they did this many times, and they did a good enough job that it's not really noticeable. I've never had anybody come up to the car and say, "Oh, look, you've got a little bit of a dent here. That's too bad," or anything like that. And I don't really notice it just from day to day. It doesn't really enter my mind. So they did pretty well. They got most of the dent out, and then they went back and took some touch-up paint and touched up the place that was scratched. And overall, I think they did a pretty good job. I was pretty satisfied. It's certainly not perfect, but I didn't have to go through a big process of having something done and a big expense. They charged me a reasonable amount. But one of the things they said is that you're looking at this, and the dent, it's the part of the panel is like this, and then it gets a dent, and then it bows this way. So you're not just adhering that tab to the metal and pulling it out. You're adhering it to the paint, and then pulling the paint out, which pulls the metal out. So the paint's got to be pretty strong. And they even mentioned to me that they've done this on many cars, and Teslas actually have really good paint. They don't crack, they don't chip, they don't scratch. So at the end of this process, the paint the part that they pulled out was not cracked, it was not chipped, it was not scratched. They just touched up the part that I scratched, and it looked pretty good. Now they had mentioned that there was one or two other car brands that really have terrible paint, and they can count on it just not doing well with this process. And I'm not going to mention what that was, because that's irrelevant. But the fact is that they said that the Tesla paint was some of the best in the industry, at least according to them. And judging from what I saw, I would have to say that they're probably right. I would tend to believe them. So one good mark for Tesla paint. Now the other part that I wanted to mention was the paint looks pretty good over the whole car, but towards the back, right in front of the back front tires, the back rear tires, right in front of that, it does have, I don't know if you call it some road rash or some dings or whatever. On one side of it, it's really not too bad. But on the other side, I think maybe it's the driver's side. It's actually, pitted up fairly decent. I probably need to go and buff it and put some paint on it and touch it up a little bit. But I'm not really sure what that's from. I guess just road debris or whatever. I would think that that's probably pretty common. I didn't really notice it, 20, 30,000 miles ago so much. I've just noticed it more recently. So probably just road debris and so forth that's come along. You can see what it looks like, and I probably do need to address it. But I don't really use this car. I don't expect it to be in a showroom or I don't expect it to be in a museum or anything like that. I bought the car to drive it, and I don't really look at the car and look for things that are wrong with it. If something jumps out at me, I might touch up something or whatever, but I don't really worry about it too much. I think you need to take the big picture in mind, especially when you do something stupid like I did. Of course, I did something stupid and it happens, and you're naturally going to get upset. You're naturally going to want to keep the car as good a condition as you can, but things are going to happen, and the big picture is that this car is not going to last forever. I'm not going to own it forever. Either somebody else is going to own it and they're going to have it, or it's going to go past its useful life and it's either going to be discarded or hopefully recycled. And at that point, all these dents and scratches and so forth are really not going to matter. And hopefully the car will last a long time. I've got over 100,000 miles. It'll be 200, 300, a million, 2 million, doesn't matter. But at some point, it's going to be done. I may own it or somebody else may. So I think that's just important to just kind of keep in mind that, what they say, you can't take anything with you. So it's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. So there was this couple, husband and wife, and the husband says to the wife, I've heard that you can't take it with you. And I don't think that's true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all my money, I'm going to put it in a duffel bag. And, I'm going to put this duffel bag up in the attic. And when I die, on my way up to heaven, I'm going to grab it. And of course the wife looks at her and rolls her eyes a little bit and says, yeah, whatever. So he does this, and the years go by, and time passes, and eventually the fella does pass away. So the wife does all the customary things that you've got to do, and goes to the funeral and so forth. Anyway, she comes back home, and she goes up into the attic. She grabs the duffel bag and says, "Damn fool, I told him to put it in the basement."